Kirsty's saying we're live. Oh, this is good news. Happy days. Okay, fab. So we're 12:31. We're now 12:32. Fabulous. Oh, okay, fab. Getting some messages. I can hear you. And hopefully you can see us.
I can see Penny's comment. Hi.
Yay. Okay, fabulous. Oh dear, right, the sweaty palms. Okay, Dominic's here as well. Amazing. Okay, so we have got some people joining us. We've got a handful of people, which is fantastic. Right, I'm putting my phone on play mode now to avoid any distractions. Okay, Tommy's with us too. Oh, fab.
Hi,
okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Excited and nervous, which is ridiculous because this is how I spend my life, is talking to people.
Well, when error messages pop up, I think it's justified.
Yeah, not helpful. Not helpful. Okay, fab. We're already 12:32. It's Stress Awareness Month. If you weren't aware that it's Stress Awareness Month, where have you been? I've definitely been talking about it a lot this month. A lot of mental health advocates have been talking a lot about on it this month, and sharing lots of resources and information as well, which we hope are helpful. So we're really delighted to be having this conversation, Leading with Love, a conversation on stress and compassion. I'm joined by the wonderful Anne Camargo, fellow MHFA instructor. And we're going to spend about 25 minutes or so having this chat. We are very aware of stress levels. We're coming into the bank holiday. A lot of people are trying to wrap things up before that Easter break. So we don't want it to feel arduous and an unhelpful long period of time. So we're aiming for about 25 minutes today. We'll keep an eye on the chat as well. So if you've got any questions or comments as we move through, please do share those with us, and we'll come to those at some point in the conversation as well. If you don't know me, I am Sally Desborough. I am I want to say mental health educator. I run mental health first aid programs and suicide first aid programs. I work a lot with people managers, think about mental health awareness from a people management perspective. I'm also the author of the book You Pick Up on a Bad Day that was released earlier this year as well. But mental health awareness is my thing. I don't want to butcher Anne's intro. So Anne, if I may hand over to you, that'd be fab.
Thanks, Sally. Hi, everybody. I'm Anne Camargo. My background is in financial services, worked in the corporate world for over 20 years until I decided that being a mental health first aid instructor was much healthier for me. And I love doing the MHFA stuff. So that's my thing at the moment. I'm also studying lots to do with health and natural health and those kind of things, but that's for the future. For now, yeah, me and Sally work together quite a bit on our MHFA courses, which is wonderful. Love working with Sally. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Anne. And if you're comfortable to share in the comments, it is Stress Awareness Month. What are your stress levels looking like currently, please, if you're comfortable to share? On a scale of 1 to 10, 1, you're not stressed at all. 10 is you're feeling really overwhelmed, really struggling to cope at the moment. Where would you say you are on that scale of 1 to 10 in terms of your current stress levels? If I can invite you to rate if you feel comfortable to share, of course, you don't have to. So 1 would be not at all stressed, 10 would be really stressed, overwhelmed, not really coping at all. And where would you say you're at the moment in terms of your current stress levels?
I'm about a 5 out of 10 because I've cleared my diary and I've had a good night's sleep and I was all ready to have a chat with you today. So I'm doing pretty good. I'm about a 5 out of 10. I've got some stuff going on. Over the last few months, I moved home. That's really stressful, and said goodbye to the apartment that I was renting. I'm selling my flat. That's not always stressful, but you got to get things signed and things in the post and questions answered. So selling a property is quite a stressful thing as well. Yeah. But I've been doing quite well over the last few months in terms of managing my stress a lot better. So I'm really into my dog walking at the moment. I love pet sitting. It's my new thing. I'm on the Trusted House Sitters website and spend a lot of time. I think we've done about 15, 20 pet sits over the last year as a family. And it's just really, really nice. It's just become a bit of a love of mine, getting out into the countryside and walking it off with the dogs. So for sure, when I'm doing that, my stress is like 1 or 2 out of 10.
Yeah.
The only stressful thing is I don't want to lose somebody else's dogs when they're off the lead.
Understandable.
So, and then, maybe when I get an email or I've got a particular deadline or task to meet, it might be up in the 7s or 8s out of 10s. And then there's that sudden onset anxiety, which sometimes can feel like a 10 out of 10 or an 11 out of 10 even. But I think I've sort of found my thing that I know makes me feel good, and that's getting out into nature and going for nice walks in the countryside.
Yeah, amazing. In the comments, we've got 3s out of 10, 5 out of 10, 7 out of 10, but going on holiday next week. So hopefully that will go down. So yeah, it's really important to take that rest and that break and really look after ourselves. And I think a lot of us are aware of, those coping strategies and what helps us to manage stress. We've been putting polls out across our social media platforms over the last couple of weeks, and exercise looks like one of the most common ways for stress management, and it is a fantastic way to look after our health and well-being, whether that's walking the dogs or going to the gym or cycling or playing sport, or I don't know, it might be dancing around in the kitchen. Physical activities, great for us. We've just had a 6 out of 10 coming in as well. Similarly, my stress levels this week very different to last week. Last week I was delivering 4 days of training all day and trying to keep on top of emails and queries and invoicing. That felt quite a lot last week. So when I was tasked with other things, I literally just had to communicate and say, my brain is so foggy, I just don't have the capacity to deal with that additional thing right now. And it's probably going to have to wait until the end of the week. So definitely communicating my needs was really important last week. And when I think back to kind of January, February time, goodness me, I think Kirsty, who very much supports me, and we were kind of in the 8s and 9s out of 10 with the book launch and all the work we were doing around Time to Talk Day. So we're doing some really positive projects that were really fulfilling, but we know that stress can come at positive times as well. So I think coming through February, we were pleased to hit March and just take time to slow down and settle down. I think we both felt exhausted for the whole of March until we started to feel our usual selves in April. And that kind of brings me back to the stress curve that I shared earlier as well. We definitely hit into that strain where we were performing, we were learning, we were doing lots of things, but we were working too much. And, it's within my gift, it's my business, and we can set our culture and work out, planning and making sure that we are fleshing things out and being really sure and confident about what things will look like. I think sometimes when you're working in an organization where you don't necessarily have that autonomy, that can be a bit tricky to navigate, right? So yeah, we were definitely moving into strain. And I did notice I was dropping the ball on emails and bits and pieces, making errors here and there and missing stuff. And then I did start to see my performance kind of decline a bit. So that rest time for us both, I think, was really important moving into March. And I think we're feeling pretty good. And of course, Stress Awareness Month, we're doing a lot. So we've already planned out May and how we're going to soften things and just slow things down as well. So that's the thing about stress. It has its ups and downs. It's not necessarily always going to be exactly the same every single day, but looking at ways you can mitigate some of that, I think is really important. How do you know when you're stressed? What does your body and your mind tell you?
Oh, it's really physical for me. So the stomach upsets, I just get a lot of stomach upsets. I can feel my stomach churning. I feel a sort of a wave of heat come over me, and it makes me feel quite dizzy, particularly in those very heightened sort of anxious moments when you do realize, oh, I've dropped the ball on this. I've missed that email. I haven't responded to something, or I've made a mistake. And it's like a wave that comes over me, a wave of nausea, and rushes to the toilet sometimes. And so stress and anxiety are very much linked for me.
Yeah.
So it's a physical thing. Lots and lots of physical symptoms. Yeah. What about you?
I think it really depends on what has caused the stress. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed and panicked, and I feel really tearful and on the verge of crying. Other times I might get a bit irritable, a bit angry. Those emotions are running on the surface very, very differently. And then, like you say, stress and anxiety so closely linked. So all of that internal worry, I've still got sweaty palms now because we got that error message. I'm still trying to cope with that, but sometimes I get the racing heart too. So I think it really depends what has triggered that stress. And then I might respond depending on different situations, which I find quite interesting. And it won't necessarily be an emotional response. It can be the body thing. It can be my appetite has changed, or I'm not sleeping as well as I would ordinarily. Sometimes it really appears in the body. So I think being aware of our being aware of our body and what our body might be telling us. Our body is communicating with us all the time. So it might be the changes in sleep, it might be the stomach aches, it might be headaches and dizziness like you've described as well. And quite often stress creeps up on us as well. There might be something that triggers. But again, when I think back to some of the polls we were putting out, the juggle of life is what people, 50% of people really struggle with. And when you're doing, relationships and moving house and kids and work and family and caring responsibilities and money and all of those things, quite often what happens, it creeps up on us and we don't necessarily notice those signs. So checking in with yourself on a regular basis, checking in with your body can be quite helpful to perhaps recognize those warning signs as well.
Yeah, and one of the really good tips that I was once given when I was doing some CBT sessions with a psychologist was the rule of threes, or the 3-3-3 technique, which was in a moment where you're feeling particularly stressed or particularly anxious about something, is to consider how you'll feel about this in 3 days' time. Will I still feel this way in 3 days' time? What about in 3 weeks' time? Looking back, how will I feel about it in 3 weeks? Oh, maybe it won't seem so bad in 3 weeks. What about in 3 months? How will I feel about it then? Oh, I'll have forgotten about it then. It really wasn't that important. And it sort of puts everything in perspective.
Yeah, I think that's something you asked me as well when Amazon cancelled all of my pre-orders. And I think you'd messaged me like really supportively, but also, kind of said about, in 6 months' time or whatever. And it is a really helpful way just to see the broader picture and the greater perspective of, it wasn't life-threatening actually, and it's all worked out, and everything's okay. Let's come to the Stress Awareness Month theme, which for this year is Leading with Love, which is deeply rooted in unconditional positive regard. That's all about how we can approach ourselves and others with kindness, with acceptance and compassion as well. When I heard about this theme, it really spoke to my heart. But let me start with you. Why do you think this theme matters so much?
Oh, I think it's just all about being kinder to yourself. Leading with love is about setting an example, I think. If you're running big departments or big teams, or you're the leader in your household or in your community, you need to set an example, and that's how important it is to actually take care of yourself and be a bit selfish. Being selfish is actually the kindest thing you can do for other people, because you're putting yourself first, your own health and well-being first. It's like putting on the oxygen mask on the aeroplane, take care of yourself before helping others. And you're not going to be able to do that role or play that leadership part if you're not healthy, if you're not taking care of yourself. So leading with love, of course, it's about, loving the people that you work with, that you spend time with, showing them compassion and kindness whilst getting the job done. But you can't do that if you're not taking care of yourself. And this was a huge lesson for me when I was younger, sort of building up my career, climbing the ladder. For the first 15 years, I was very driven, very ambitious. And I ignored all of the warning signs that were telling me, this isn't really sustainable. You need to start slowing down and looking after yourself. And I think when you're young, when you're in your 20s, early 30s, you've got a lot of energy, you've got a lot of resilience, and you can go for it. And then as I've got a little bit older, I've realized, these signs and symptoms is my body's way of telling me to slow down. You're taking on too much. Take care of yourself. Especially if, I get, when I'm stressed, I didn't say this earlier, but I get quite snappy with my family. I can sort of get quite moody and take it out on them if, something doesn't get done. So I become a bit grouchy and a bit of a, just a nagger, they would say. And that's a really good sign. It shows me, it tells me, okay, I'm not taking care of myself, because if I do something nice for myself, if I take care, then I'm a much nicer mom and a nicer wife and a nicer friend. So, leading with love for me is about actually loving yourself and putting yourself first, doing lots of self-care and leading by example. And that way other people will follow suit, you would hope.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think being kind to ourselves, it creates that buffer, doesn't it? And it can have those positive impacts on the people around us. I think the challenge with stress is it often pushes us into survival mode. and that makes us more disconnected, maybe from we disconnect from our body and mind and our heart. Perhaps our mind and our heart starts to become disconnected because we're in that survival mode. We might be more reactive because of stress, and that means we're more likely to approach situations with frustration or defensiveness, or we might be more reactive, or we might be more negative as well. And if we're in that state, it's easy to beat ourselves up. Why can't I do this work? How is it everybody else is coping? What is wrong with me? And if that's how we're feeling within ourselves and beating ourselves up, if somebody comes along and says, do you have a minute? Well, no, I don't have a minute. I'm too busy. And then we start to be reactive to people. And that is the challenge with stress is, we go back to our ancestral brain of survival. And what that can do is create the disconnect. And we might react in ways that damages relationships. And we can feel so emotionally alone. No one understands it, or I've got to get all of this work done and it's ridiculous. I can't believe these workloads, Again, through our polls, workload is the biggest cause of stress, at work. So if people are feeling alone with their workload or the demands of their work, and they don't have that community around them, that increased sense of isolation can worsen those feelings of stress as well. And then if you're reacting negatively, it might damage those relationships, so you feel even more disconnected. So I think leading with love is fantastic. I think it's so important, starting with ourselves, so then we can support other people as well. But I don't think it's easy. I don't think it's necessarily easy. And I think it takes a lot of practice on making conscious choices to respond rather than react, thinking about how we can treat ourselves with compassion and patience and understanding. And if we're doing that, it might have those positive knock-on effects to other people. And it's likely to strengthen and build our resilience if we're treating ourselves with kindness. And then the people around us as well. Somebody's made an error. Oh, for goodness sake, they've made that mistake. It's such a simple mistake. Actually, think about it from their point of view. They're doing a good job. They're trying really hard. They are human. It's just an error. Was it an intention for them to annoy you by making this mistake? Probably not. Let's be curious and ask, what's happened here? I just want to understand from your point of view, kind of what's happened here, rather than kind of jumping to conclusions that, they've just not pulled their weight, or they've not put effort in, or they've just been a bit lazy. But if we're feeling the stress, then it's really hard to do that. So I think it's important, first of all, to recognize that those feelings and emotions and what the body is telling us, but also then think about, right, how can I hack into my brain's natural mode to try and effectively manage this and deal with it in a positive way and not affect my relationships as well. And
you mentioned workload there, and just to highlight that point about workload, we get stuck in a vicious circle with our workload. The amount of work we have to do stresses us out, and when we're stressed, we don't perform at our best. We're not as productive as we should be. And even when we get the job done, the next load of work comes in. It's never ending. It just keeps on coming. So you'll never get all of your work done. And I think we beat ourselves up about that. We're really cruel to ourselves sometimes in terms of workload. There will always be work to do. It's never ending. I was working in constant fire drills. And just when you get one report off to management, you sort of go, oh, God, that was tough, but we got it done. And the next minute, another one comes in. So it's just constant, and it's hard. We have to really, in this, in that way of working, we really have to, be quite disciplined with ourselves, be very strict on ourselves to switch off at a certain time every day and say, you know what, this has to wait until tomorrow. This can wait until tomorrow. And just give ourselves a little bit of downtime in the evenings and the weekends to recover from that constant adrenaline high that over long periods of time they will make us seriously ill. Your adrenal glands get so tired in the end that they'll pack up. So you've got to think about the future and think about the health implications of permanent high levels of stress, and get it down below the 5 out of 10. Of course, it's going to go up above the 5 out of 10 during these ups and downs that we were talking about. But it's got to swing back down again to give your body that chance to heal and recover from it.
Yeah, 100%. Because we are wired to overwork. And it isn't just, again, about workload and work. You've got relationships at work. You've got change at work. You've got technology at work. Yeah, it's happening all the time. And then you've got life as well. And we do have a tendency to overwork, and it's easy to really push and push and push. But ultimately, your job will never be done. You could work 24/7. There will still be work to do. So managing those boundaries from a health perspective is really important, because if you don't, you're not necessarily going to be able to sustain healthy and high performance. So again, I think that's really important. And when it comes to stress management, I think a lot of people are aware of, going out for a walk, doing some breathing exercises. I'm going to go for a swim. I'm going to do some crochet, whatever that might be. What are those things that we enjoy that can really help to manage in some of those times? But at the same time, if you're working in a workplace where it's quite a toxic culture, or it's 70-hour working weeks and that's the expectation, no amount of breathing exercises is really going to necessarily help with that environmental stress. So whilst we as individuals, there's lots of things that we can do to try to manage our stresses and look after our health and well-being, organizations do need to be aware of the part that they play in terms of culture and systems and support and people, so that actually work is a determinant of health and well-being rather than kind of taking away from people's health and well-being. And that's where we really need to get to. But of course, that takes a lot of time, energy, and effort. And if that is the workplace, if it is quite, culturally toxic maybe, or if it is, we're under lots of scrutiny and they're looking at headcount and they're cutting costs, and now the team size has to be reduced, and now there's, 2 people now doing 5 people's jobs, that's not an ideal scenario. But when you're treating people with kindness, compassion, and acceptance, accessing support is so much more easy. People find it easier to ask for the help that they need and share it. And that builds resilience and makes stress feel, oh, I can cope with this a bit more because we're sharing it. It's a lived experience together. And so we can ask for the help and we can find it easy to provide support to the people. So I think that's where this is so important in building those communities in the workplace, and also personally, of course, as well.
Yeah, for me, the turning point for me when I was in that situation, in terms of working long hours, lots of workload, lots of stress, making myself ill, having lots of colds and sore throats, the turning point for me was when I realized I had a choice. And that was mind-blowing for me, that I had a choice and there was another way. And it didn't happen overnight, but I started to take the steps to put an action plan together to change my life, because I realized I had to start putting my own health first. And so I think just realizing that there is a choice, there are other ways to make money, there are other jobs, there are other lifestyles, you can start your own business, you can think about other sources of income, there are ways out of this. Once you start to have health issues because of ongoing stress, permanent stress, it really takes a long, long time to recover from that. It's just not worth allowing your body to get to that stage. So recognizing these early signs of, these acute health issues before it becomes chronic is really key. And I saw what Maria said about spinning plates. Absolutely, we're spinning plates the whole day. We're not giving our bodies a chance to wind down and relax.
Yeah,
I think book a holiday, book a weekend away, book a retreat, and use that time to really think about your health, mind, body, and spirit, and what you can do to change things in your life, because you do have a choice. You don't have to live in this stress year after year after year.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, I think it's really powerful with your lived experience and kind of my lived experience. I started to experience kind of poor mental health, and I was kind of like, I really need to consider what I'm going to do, because it just wasn't healthy for me at that time. And some of these decisions can feel massive and feel really big, but actually when you sit down and, okay, what are my options? Okay, so maybe I've got a plan in a year just so I get my ducks in a row. I think that can be really powerful. But equally, we know that there's lots of people, under pressure, single parents, or it might be, the breadwinner who feels like, well, I don't know if there is an option because I'm the only one earning the money and we've got this mortgage and we have to clear this amount every month. And that's when it can become really, really tricky and stressful, is when people do feel trapped and they don't have, they can't see necessarily an alternative. But actually talking things through, again, using those relationships, if we're leading with love, having confidence to talk about your needs and if we are, again, leading with love, acceptance, kindness, compassion, there's no fear of judgment. It's safe to share. We can foster trusting relationships, both personally and professionally. Okay.
Yeah, I think starting with that talking about it, you've got to start somewhere. So talk about it, then start thinking about what your choices are. Think about things that you can put into plan, short term and long term. I mean, I was the main breadwinner. I know I've been there. It's really hard, but just start by talking about it, and maybe start to have a think about what are your choices, what could you change, what could you do less of, what do you need to do more of, and just start putting an action plan in place.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a big rush decision, so it's time. You can still take your time, just visiting all the options and having discussions and whatever else as well. Okay, fabulous. Keeping an eye on the chat. We haven't had any questions so far. Has anybody got any questions for us? We have been going for almost 27 minutes now. And while we're just waiting for those to come in, just our closing note for today. Anne, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received about stress or stress management?
Well, I've mentioned already my 3-3-3 technique, which I'll just repeat again. If you're in a particularly heightened, stressful moment, how will I feel about this in 3 days? Just sit back and consider that. Then how will I think about this in 3 weeks? Or how will I feel about it in 3 weeks? And then 3 months. And you can even do 3 years as well. And it helps me to put things in perspective. Nobody died. Everybody's okay. Things will be fine. So that's one thing. And the other thing I just mentioned as well, so I've kind of, no surprises, the feeling like you have a choice. If we feel that we are sort of locked into a situation, the pressure is all on us. We put that pressure on ourselves. We're the main breadwinner. We've got a mortgage. We have to look after other people. People are relying on us. That's something that you sort of have to take some time out and really think about, because that pressure that we put on ourselves is really unhealthy. So thinking about, what are my choices? Where could I go? Is this really what I want to be doing with my life? What changes do I need to make? But I think it does start by, thinking about choices. And sometimes we have to take a difficult choice, but other times we might just get that light bulb moment and go, oh yeah, actually, I don't need to be doing this. And so those would be a couple of tips from me.
Nice. Thank you, Anne. And from me, I think when it comes to stress management, what's within your control? Focus on that. What's within your direct control? What's not in your control? What can't you change? Trying to identify and both of those, what's in my control and what's not. What's not in your control, you don't have the power to change. You can't necessarily do anything about. That's when we start to have a lack of agency and drive and motivation. That's maybe when we start to feel overwhelmed because I can't change that thing, no matter how much I stress about it. So I think from a stress management perspective, focusing on and honing and looking at the things, what can I change? And that will give me a sense of agency. And also, when I used to work in HR, I remember having a conversation with my manager and they said, if this doesn't happen, if this piece of work doesn't happen, is anyone going to die? Like literally just put it into perspective. If that doesn't happen, if you can't get that over the deadline, or if that doesn't get done within that time frame, are people going to die? Well, no, they're not. But the client might be, yes, the client might be disappointed. The customer might be disappointed. But when you take a step back and put things into perspective, was I performing heart surgery and saving lives? I can't say that I was. So again, just trying to take that step back and gain a little bit of perspective. Okay, fab.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah, in the chat.
That's a good tip for a good tip for us, the control freaks amongst us that like to control everything. It's like, let go, it's okay, nobody's going to die.
The recovering perfectionist. I'm still working on it. Okay, fab. In the chat, I like the sound of the 3-3-3 technique. I guess it's a balance as you can still acknowledge it's okay to have those feelings. It's how you deal with them, manage them, and work through them. Accepting that we're having these feelings as well. It's not about avoiding or burying your head in the sand. It's, yep, I accept I've got these feelings. How can I use some coping strategies? If it's a longer term thing, maybe we need some systems or other support in place. Fantastic. We have been going for about half an hour. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening in. We hope you found it a helpful conversation. Thank you, Anne, for your insights and your time, of course. And
thank you, Sally. I always enjoy when we chat with you. Yeah.
Perfect. Catch up soon. Thanks so much, everyone.